The general manager may be taking a cautious approach to the trade deadline, but the captain is not ready to jump ship.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren. Today is Tuesday, February 25th, a Boston Bruins game day, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. It's available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And for the second time in less than a week, a team with a Maple Leaf will be visiting TD Garden. Won't be as exciting this time, probably, but the Bruins hosting the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight. It's a game we will preview later on in the podcast after discussing some of the latest with regards to the black and gold, including Brad Marchand reiterating his commitment to the team. Before we get into that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. Now, while Brad Marchand is a potential to be moved prior to the trade deadline, he made it known again on Monday that he wants to finish his career as a member of the Boston Bruins. He can become an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. He's played his entire 16-year career with Boston. He's got 45 points in 58 games this season, which is still pretty good production for a player 36 years old. He said he's always planned on playing in Boston his entire career. That hasn't changed. Management's aware of that. Everyone's aware of that. He said it's a gift to be playing for this team. He takes a tremendous amount of pride in it, especially wearing the C, and it's always been a goal. General Manager Don Sweeney, addressing the media on Sunday, did say the Bruins would take a more cautious approach to the deadline than in the past. That could include trading pieces off the current roster. And Marchand is definitely a candidate to build the team for the future, especially with Hampus Lindholm likely out for the rest of the season. Defenseman Charlie McAvoy out indefinitely. That really hurts their slim chances of making the playoffs. But asked whether he feels like he has some control over the situation given his standing with the team, Marchand said they're in talks and he feels like he understands where he's at personally, as do the Boston Bruins. Now, if a team came calling and offering a massive trade package with picks, prospects for Marchand because Team X is trying to get over the hump and win the Stanley Cup, like a Toronto Maple Leafs, like an Edmonton Oilers, like, say, the Carolina Hurricanes or the Vegas Golden Knights. The Bruins would have to take that call and see exactly what they want to offer. Marchand does have some trade protection. I believe it's an 8-team no-trade list. So if they were to trade him to a team on that list, they would need his permission. But otherwise, there's 23 other teams that the Bruins could trade him to without having to talk to him beforehand. Now, you would think that as the captain, the longest standing player on the team, the only remaining player from the 2011 Stanley Cup team, you would think that they would give him that courtesy of discussing it with him before sending him elsewhere. But it's not absolutely necessary based on his contract to do that before pulling the trigger. Now, as we talk about that, we see that while Sweeney has kind of waved the white flag here, that doesn't mean the players have. And there's a lot of pride on that team. There's a lot of guys who want to experience playoff hockey, want to have that shot at the Stanley Cup. As far-fetched as it may seem at this point, you never know what can happen once you get into the Stanley Cup playoffs. And a guy like Nikita Zadorov, for example, signed here specifically for an opportunity to win and to experience playoff hockey in Boston. Even last week at the Four Nations Face-Off, the final game, we saw that clip of Zadorov talking to Mason Lohrei about, is this what it's like in the playoffs? Because this is bonkers, the atmosphere inside TD Garden. Even when you talk about like a rebuild or a tank, that doesn't necessarily flow to the players. These guys are competitive. This is their living that they're making. This is their reputations on the line. While management may quote unquote tank by subtracting or building a roster that is not going to be competitive, kind of on purpose, accidentally on purpose, the players are out there each and every night grinding it out and trying to do their best to earn spots on the team for next year, to earn new contracts, what have you. So while Don Sweeney's kind of said we're taking a cautious approach, i.e., we're not going to be buyers per se, and we don't believe this roster is necessarily built to win this season, the players see that they're only a point or two outside of the playoff race and that they still could squeak in and get that experience. Ideally, I think the Bruins should be subtracting some guys off the roster that likely won't re-sign or they don't have the intention to re-sign, and call up some kids like a Georgi Merkulov, like a to give them that experience of like the next 23 games are going to be 24 games. It's going to be a grind. It's going to be a playoff type atmosphere, playoff type competition. So give them that experience down the stretch because, look, the odds are stacked against you in terms of making it. So there's not a ton of pressure, especially if you're entering into sell mode. But they're still close enough that they could get that experience down the stretch of playing meaningful hockey. See what you have in these guys and make determinations on their futures in the offseason while recouping some prospects and draft picks by selling off Trent Frederick, a Justin Brazeau, a Morgan Geekie, perhaps even Charlie Coyle and Brandon Carlo. Those would probably be the top 5 guys you're looking to move. I saw Jeff Merrick on Daily Faceoff yesterday, perhaps suggesting that Mason Lohrei could be a candidate to be moved. My take on that is maybe, big question mark, because say he, as an RFA, isn't interested in signing a bridge contract, which is probably what he should be up for at this time. He's got some potential, but also some warts. If he's looking to sign kind of like a 6 or 7 year deal worth $6 million per season, then yeah, maybe you look to trade him and you could get a lot for him right now, I believe. But if he's kind of willing to sign that bridge deal and work his way up to more prominent role on both ends of the ice, then he's probably a guy that you want to keep to build around. Anyways, that's my take of the day. The players aren't waving the white flag. Brad Marchand's committed to this team. Next year could be kind of a soft reset. The Washington Capitals are the prime kind of example to draw from. Bad season last year, squeaked into the playoffs, made some savvy moves in the offseason. Look at them now. Of course, they did have some solid players to build around, some prospects making the jump. But kind of the soft example to draw from there. We're going to take a look at the playoff projections and preview tonight's Bruins-Leafs game here as the podcast continues. Let's say you're assessing your business and you realize you need to hire someone like yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed's sponsored job posts put your listing at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. Now you can spend or speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Boston Bruins. Indeed's sponsored jobs come in so handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now, and you can get that $75 sponsored job credit by going to Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions do apply, but if you're hiring, Indeed is all you need. Now, if we're being realistic about Boston's Stanley Cup aspirations or even their playoff aspirations, things aren't looking too good, according to some of the leading projectors out there. Look at Money Puck here this morning. The Bruins have a 15% chance of making the playoffs. Right now in the Eastern Conference, Washington's 100% to make it. The Leafs, Panthers, Hurricanes, even the Lightning, and the Devils are pretty much locks, all at 94% or better. There's really only a couple spots open. Ottawa's the favorite right now at 61%. Detroit at 48.6%. Even the Rangers and Islanders at 43.7% and 23.6% respectively have better chance of making it than our Bruins, and that's according to Money Puck. If we look at the Athletic, also a top projector, pretty similar. You have Washington, Toronto, Carolina, all basically 99% chance of making the playoffs, as well as the Panthers. The Lightning are at 98%, Devils at 97%. So that leaves, again, two and Detroit, the Rangers, and Islanders, and even the Blue Jackets, all having better odds than the Bruins, who are at 18% right now, according to The Athletic. And a big part of that is the fact that they only have, they have fewer games remaining than the rest of the league or the rest of the Eastern Conference. The Athletic also takes into account expected goals for and against. The Bruins' offense, of course, we know is pretty bad. Their defense is struggling and will do so again without Hammons Lindholm, Charlie McAvoy for some time. So, again, not looking too good. Now, if we look at Hockey Reference, the Bruins, according to them, have an 18.4% chance of making the playoffs. Ottawa, 54.7%. Detroit at 40.7%. The Blue Jackets at 42.2%. It really looks like there could be 5 teams coming out of the Atlantic Division. Apart from Washington, Carolina, and New Jersey, it's a bit of a crapshoot over there in the Metro with Columbus, the Rangers, the Islanders, all still kind of in the mix. The Red Wings, Senators, Bruins kind of hanging around there, but the projections aren't very friendly for them either. All that to say, it's going to be a real uphill battle for the Bruins. And if you look again at their, just not even the underlying numbers, but the basic stats, let's consider this a little mini Eastern Conference power rankings update. In terms of total points, the Bruins right now are in 10th. 1 point up on the Rangers, but with one more game played. They're 4 points up on the Islanders, but also the Islanders have 2 games in hand. The teams you can really rule out here are the Sabres, the Penguins, the Flyers. The Canadians are at 500, but a very slim chance of making it. Islanders are at 509. The Bruins 10th in terms of point percentage, tied with the New York Rangers at 526. So you have 9 teams ahead of them, including the Blue Jackets, Senators. The Red Wings now have a better point percentage than the Ottawa Senators to put them in 7th in the East. Ottawa's in 8th. Columbus is in 9th at the moment. If you're ranking the teams by goal differential, there's only 7 teams with positive goal differentials in the Eastern Conference. Columbus is at +2. Ottawa is at -1. The Rangers -7. Even the Sabres are -8. The Red Wings -11. The Bruins way down at -26, which is 4th worst in the conference, just slightly better than Montreal and Philadelphia heading into tonight's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. And we'll take a look at kind of their scoring, their defense, special teams as we previewed tonight's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Toronto, of course, is tops in the Atlantic Division at the moment, seemingly the team to beat in the Atlantic, although Florida's right back there, only 1 point back with 1 more game played. Even the Lightning have crept up a bit. They're only 4 points back of Toronto with a game in hand. So those 3 teams looking very strong, meaning even if the Bruins do make it, then it's going to be really tough to beat one of those teams. If they squeak into the second wildcard spot, they take on the Washington Capitals, who are by far the top team in the East, a 12-point lead over Toronto in the standings. And if they were to make the first wildcard spot, they would be up against Toronto, Florida, maybe Tampa, and that would be a tough one as well. So that's kind of the situation heading into it. The Bruins know that they are going to struggle to, A, make the playoffs, be competitive if they get there, leading to a cautious selling approach at the deadline. But Marchand's still committed to this team. The players are still going to come out and put their best skate forward, and they're going to try to build off that overtime loss to Anaheim on Saturday, beginning tonight against the Maple Leafs. And it's a game we'll preview here as the podcast continues. Bruins, Maple Leafs tonight at TD Garden. The first time a Maple Leaf has been donned on TD Garden ice since last week. And it is the 4th and final meeting between these 2 teams this season. If you recall, the Bruins won back in October by a score of 4-3. On November 5th, Toronto shut out the Bruins 4-0, and then they beat them again on January 4th by a score of 6-4. So Toronto 2-1 up on the season series, and they have a 13-8 advantage in terms of goals scored in the season series so far. The Leafs are 6-4-0 over their past 10 games. They won 2 in a row coming out of the Four Nations face-off break, beating Carolina and Chicago. The Bruins, of course, have only played once since the break, losing in overtime to Anaheim after erasing a 2-0 deficit in that game. The Leafs are led in scoring by Mitch Marner, and by quite a wide margin, really. He's got 71 points in 56 games. Second leading scorer is William Nylander, who leads the team in goals. If you can believe it, he has had some injury issues, but Austin Matthews is tied for 3rd in goals on the Maple Leafs this season, although he's played only 42 games so far. He's got 21 goals in 42 games, putting him on almost a 40-goal pace, I guess. He does have 7 points over the Leafs' last 5 games, including 6 assists. The Bruins led still by David Pastrnak, who's got 8 points over his last 5 games and has a 24-point advantage over Brad Marchand in terms of scoring, and his 69 points in 58 games. If you look at the rest of the Bruins, After Marchand, you have Zacha at 33 points, Lindholm with 30 points. It's very slim pickings for the Bruins offensively this season, and that should really put Pastrnak in the MVP conversation. Now, when it comes to offense, the Leafs are 12th in the NHL, 3.16 goals per game. Their defense is ranked 11th at 2.82 goals per game that they are allowing. The Bruins 24th in both categories, 2.74 goals per game, 3.17 goals allowed per game. The Leafs have the 13th ranked power play and the 14th ranked penalty kill. The Bruins are 30th on the power play and 24th on the penalty kill. The Bruins are a top 10 team on the faceoffs, but the Maple Leafs very strong in that area. They rank third. So you got to see the Leafs don't really jump out in terms of one area where they are the best, but you look at their goals for and against, 11th and 12th, 13th, 14th, special teams. They're just a solid team that can beat you on any given night. In net, Joseph Woll, 910 save percentage. Anthony Stolarz with a 928 save percentage. For the Bruins, Swayman still sub 900. Korpisalo at 892, although they have combined for 6 shutouts so far this season. So on paper, it would look as though the Bruins will be outmatched in this one. It is, of course, the first game between the two teams since the Four Nations face-off, where Mitch Marner set up Connor McDavid for the tournament clinching goal with Austin Matthews also on the ice. Perhaps he'll get some jeers tonight. Marchand, of course, on that Canadian winning team. It'd be interesting to see how he and Marner interact out there on the ice. For the Bruins, it's, a big game with some big points on the line. They are only 1 point back of Ottawa. Ottawa does have a game in hand. They're 3 points back of Detroit. They also have a game in hand. So, you can't afford to, have dropped points against Anaheim. It's understandable if they lose to a team like Toronto, but every point is so important right now. Detroit is playing Minnesota tonight, against whom they had a lead on the weekend and gave it up. Senators not in action tonight. They'll be playing the Jets tomorrow night. So that's a big opportunity for Boston to pick up some points and have Ottawa leave some on the table tomorrow. Anyways, that is it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. I hope you are all doing well, taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other. We have been watching White Lotus Season 3. Very good so far. 1923 is back. We started that last night. Paradise on Hulu, Disney Plus has been very good. We also started watching 1,000 Blows, which is a boxing kind of crime gang show from the guy who made Peaky Blinders. Just if you're looking for something to watch on an amazing Canadian band. Their 30th anniversary tour is coming to London, Ontario, and Lauren and I are going to go check that out next Saturday, which, in the world we live in, the times we live in, it's important to have something to look forward to, and that certainly is it on the calendar for us. All right, I hope you have a great day. We'll be back tomorrow to recap whatever happens tonight against the Maple Leafs, bring you all the latest on the black and gold. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I was also on the latest Squad show, so check that out when it drops on the YouTube feed. Me and Eddie Garcia from Locked On Kings, Gil Martin from Locked On Islanders jumped on yesterday to have a chat about Four Nations, trade deadline, a bunch of cool stuff. All right, friends, have a good one. We'll talk to you again here tomorrow on Locked On Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.